Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to AIEC's Webinar Weeks. We're glad you're joining us today. This is the first in a series of 4 webinars that we will be having today. This will be the last of our webinar weeks for 2020. I will say, if you've enjoyed this, if you've attended some of our past webinars, you find this beneficial, please drop us a line. Let us know that you're enjoying these, and we will continue to look for content that we could potentially start up right after the first of the year. So if you're enjoying it, drop us a line, let us know. Today we have Exelon ClearSight with us. They're going to be presenting on drone inspections of overhead systems. This presentation will last approximately 45 minutes. We'll leave some time for questions at the end. Please submit those questions through the chat function. You can select the drop down and select AIEC, and we will moderate those questions to our presenters. As always, please keep your microphones muted unless our presenters open up the floor and they ask you to unmute those microphones. That would be perfectly fine. Brian, if we have someone attending today that's curious about PE credits, what can they do?
Yeah, if you have not already done so, just shoot me an email to let me know if you're a PE and looking for those PDHs. I just want to make sure I have a good list in order to get you guys those PDHs at the end of today. Hopefully I'll have those out to you later this week or the first part of next week. So I think most of the people on here have already let me know, but if you have not, just shoot me an email real quick so I can make sure I'm watching those registrations. And with that, we have 2 presenters today. Roy Paulk is the president of New Horizons Consulting. He's spent 37 years in the electric co-op industry with 2 GNTs, 2 distribution co-ops, and 7.5 years with NRECA. After his retirement in 2007, he founded New Horizons Consulting. His consulting practice is focused on electric cooperatives and municipal power systems, or companies that provide services to those markets, such as Exelon ClearSight. Our other presenter is Kevin Foss. He is the Senior Business Development Manager at Exelon ClearSight. Kevin is a veteran of the energy technology business with over 25 years of experience. His work includes GIS, engineering, design, asset management, specialized data collection technologies, and related services to utilities. He understands how today's utilities can leverage the latest in unmanned aerial systems and advanced sensors to acquire data, combined with best practices for human-in-the-loop inspection and review to ensure assets are being properly maintained. And with that, I will hand it over to Kevin.
Thank you very much, Brian. Hey, Roy, did you want to say a few words before we get started here?
Yes, I want to thank the group for having us this morning. We're looking forward to the comments that we have to make. We want it to be beneficial to you all. And at the appropriate time, we want to have your questions because our goal this morning is to make sure that we give you information and that we use your time properly. So thank you for letting us be a part of this day.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Keith. Thank you.
No problem. All right, as pointed out, my name is Kevin Foss. I'll be doing the presentation today. We're going to share with, well, what are we going to share? There it goes. We're going to share in working with co-ops some things we've kind of learned in doing that, kind of that shared experience. Talk about what we'll call our end-to-end solution. We'll get a little more detail what that means. Go over some capabilities. Then I'm going to do, knock on wood, a live demo. If every Zoom meeting and everything, allows us to do that. And then throughout the course of the presentation, if you submit questions, particularly around topics that are being currently covered, I don't mind going ahead and answer those and filling those out, because you may not be the only person that needs a deeper understanding of the topics that we have. So I'll go ahead and get us started here. So Exelon ClearSight, we've been doing this probably since around 2015, 2016. more kicked it off for 2018. To date, these are a list of the folks that we've either have current projects or active discussions. We really feel like it's a great opportunity to work with our co-op partners in the fact that we feel like that you guys are close to the line. You're running lean and mean, and we feel like what we have to offer is something that's very, very valuable to our co-op customers. So here's just a sampling of projects as well as discussions we have and some of the entities that we're having those with. So as far as takeaways and work with folks like you, everybody thinks that innovation is going to be really costly. What they don't realize is that the savings in efficiency, quality of data, the ability to reuse data by using drones to collect data and then process it and use it for other downstream uses, far outweighs in a lot of cases the expense that they would incur. Another key thing is a lot of people, and I know particularly in your state, are having their own programs. So there are opportunities for people to have their own drones, certainly for emergent work, getting into things where if it's a storm or something, you want to be the first line of defense. You want to be able to get up situational awareness. So we're finding that a lot of organizations will do their own, self-perform to a certain degree, but also that they see the natures of either specialization or scaling where they outsource some of those as well. The other thing is that we try to pride ourselves on being able to collect as much data in the missions that we collect in order for us to be able to serve multiple stakeholders beyond our initial collect, and we'll get into that in just a minute. And then I think this group already knows, but obviously the benefits of that ground of the being in the air, that perspective versus being on the ground. And then as far as any kind of integration capabilities, once the data is collected, the reports are found, then they're easily ingestible into other systems. So those are the conversations typically we have when working with co-ops.
Kevin, let me add one other thing while you're there. Synthesizing the data, knowing how to use the data and making good use of it downstream besides just the images is very important. The other thing I would say here is that we want to add value to your system because you have you have a drone. It's sort of like when I was a co-op manager. If I had crews that did routine work, but I wanted to have a big job done, I wouldn't buy trucks and equipment and hire extra people to do that big job and then be stuck with the overhead when it's over. So there is a differentiation in how we can add value, and we welcome that opportunity to your system because you already have a drone.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and we'll cover those aspects in greater detail throughout the presentation. So we mentioned earlier we've got an end-to-end process. So from our standpoint, we come from part of Exelon Utilities, so we have people who are very, very mindful of energized environments. They know where the equipment. They're also obviously pilots. So, we acquire the data in such a way with our shot lists and stuff that, it's anticipated how the data is being used downstream. We process the data. By that, we basically have taken some of the processes and software that we have internally developed, and we've put it into a platform that's customer facing, and we'll get into a little more detail there. So we take the data, we index the data, i.e. we tie the data onto discrete assets, maybe it could be a structure ID, something of that nature. And then kind of what's unique for us, versus maybe our counterparts, is the ability to then send the data over, and each and every image is reviewed by a team of subject matter experts. So realize, as being part of Exelon Utilities, we're drawing from a lot of those expertise, right? They got those people, journeymen, people from distribution engineering, transmission engineering, veg, those kind of things. So we got people that look at every single image. And then what they're doing is kind of back to the philosophy of us being housed within Exelon Utilities. They're then taking those images and findings, and they're assigning a ranking based upon prioritization. So once again, these are processes that we have kind of, refined and determined and put into best practices within our own operating utilities, and we're now passing those along to customers. Now I'll stop there. We'll get a little bit of detail. If you have, something that you feel like or is what you would like for us to recognize and be able to then, send back to you as how you would like to rank the findings, then we certainly can adapt to anybody's mechanism or anybody's priority ranking system. We have one in case people don't have it, or we have one that we can meld with customer owned. And then the final piece, kind of what's typed in the end, you collect the data, you index the data, you review the data, prioritize it, then you have to have a place. So the place for us is a portal or a platform where we actually manage the data. So that's where our clients would be able to interact with the data, see the data, be able to report on it, be able to export it, be able to run their analytics are all in that particular data management platform. So that's why we say we got end to end. A lot of people may do collection, a little bit of processing, but it's rare to find someone that does the collection or can take collections, do the processing, do the review and analysis and ranking, and then also have a system to be able to publish the data back to the clients. So you heard me talk about, we're trying to get as much as we can. So here's an example. We'll do a baseline inspection, which I'll get into in just a moment. But after you collect the data, then the data can be further analyzed and used for other purposes. As a function of collecting the data, maybe you're able to do takeoffs for equipment inventory, or maybe you're doing joint use, service audits, or you're being able to determine potential vegetation, as well as some really complicated things that we've been doing lately in California, centered around fire hazard assessment or assessment or risk assessment in general, and mitigative practices and building vegetation plans and stuff like that. So our whole philosophy is try to collect as much as we can, understanding that we may not know right then another downstream benefit, but there could be another stakeholder, downstream that may ask for something that we already have the data collected. So probably singing the choir here, but here's a good example. We like to use this. We affectionately call this our drinking straw. In that someone, put up a new piece of equipment, a cross arm. There's some other, and then because of the fact that this was, done based upon the initial inspection from the ground, they weren't able to see that there's, structural integrity was compromised in this pole, and it was actually, hollow when they're putting that cross arm on there. So I'm sure this group understands, but just kind of the value of that being in the air perspective versus on the ground. So this is our baseline. We'll call it a comprehensive overhead inspection. Typically, in addition to us collecting information, complete 360 around the pole, as well as other what we'll call shots, we also combine it with an IR inspection typically. So when we're at the assets, we're trying to collect as much information to be able to ensure reliability, and that we're not going to have any service interruptions, or if are also being able to point out where we can mitigate circumstances, for potential service interruptions. And then once this baseline is created, then we take the data and we prioritize everything we find in the priority matrix. And then, kind of going back to the mantra of what we're able to collect in a single trip, once that baseline information is collected along with the IR, then we're able to, potentially have these other work products that are available based upon that same data. Getting a little deeper into infrared, here's something as far as heat maps, being able to kind of determine across your system, where you may have some hot spots. here's a detailed thermographic report where we have the compilation of the RGB along with the thermal and a detailed report. So this would be issued if there was some kind of anomaly found, and it would be available in our customer portal. So we find that doing both of these, is the best way to go, mainly because you're trying to do as much as you can when you're out of the assets.
Kevin, can I add one thing to what you just said?
Absolutely.
Go back one slide, please.
Yes, sir.
You'll see on the bottom right that also gives you some flavor for joint use attachments.
Yeah, it brings up a good point, Roy. And I'm sure you've heard something similar, but we set up shot lists. So a shot list is basically, hey, what are we trying to get? And on the end, is it going to be a conditions report? Is it an equipment report? Is it vegetation? So we customize our shot list to make sure that we encompass the collection of the data for its intended uses. To Roy's point, we add in selected shots around the kind of NESC, the whole joint use side of the house, where we're specifically have those for people to be able to then review that. We've worked with customers where they'll send us over their essential joint use database, and we're verifying, is there more services than what's in your database, that kind of stuff. Thank you, Roy. Here's the IR. Also, kind of that common theme, that mantra, we could take the same data that we captured and we could run other analysis. So in this instance, we're taking RGB imagery and we're looking around the right of way at a structure and a span level. And then we're indicating, which I'll go into a little bit later, points of interest where we may have potential vegetation encroachments. Maybe we have a fall-in risk. Maybe there's a tree that's not healthy. So we can identify all that along our collections. Also, we have payloads for LiDAR. So this is, much more exacting, much more sophisticated at an engineering level, but suffice to say, we have the capabilities to collect LiDAR, whereby we're then running that against calculated models. Those models would include, radial distances, or what we call minimum vegetation clearance distances, where you're taking a service and then you're modeling that against the nearest known piece of vegetation. Also, that gets into canopies, as far as, hey, look, here's a canopy where potentially we need to cut because it needs to be able to accommodate, service lines around it. So the other use that we have for LiDAR, or customers work with us on, is for, potential planning purposes. Maybe they're going to be doing a study to figure out routing. Also for structural analysis as it pertains to pole loading. In other words, if I'm intending on putting an extra service on an existing structure, two things are happening. Number one, do I need to move the services within that NESC kind of clearance range to be able to accommodate the new service? And number two, structurally, am I able to accept that service based on the current configuration of the pole? Do I need to swap out the pole? And then finally, with our LiDAR analysis and PLS CAD studies, we could do things like determine, sag at maximum load, determine blowout, determine, galloping, different things where we can simulate to determine where we may need to clear vegetation in this case, because in a potential scenario with wind, the line may slap out and hit a piece of vegetation unintentionally. We also extend the IR capabilities to underground assets. We've been doing a fair amount of these underground vault inspections where we're identifying any kind of anomalies, loose connections, that kind of thing. and then providing both the IR report along with the RGB. What our customers are finding that typically they would normally stick people, humans in one of these vaults, but they don't necessarily need to do that anymore because the drone can take the place of that. And plus the drone with the radiometric cameras that are on board today gets a lot of detailed information that you may or may not pick up if you're just kind of going into one of those vaults and trying to collect it on your own in traditional methods. The other thing is, we've talked everything around aerial. They gave me the opening of overhead. We also do a form of ground line inspection. We do a little differently than you're, having to excavate and do sound and bore. We're all around analytics and innovation. So we happened upon this ristography methodology whereby you can drill into a pole to determine its width or diameter, right? How thick it is. And then you drill a series of subterranean holes with the drill understanding how far the diameter of the pole, how far it needs to go across to get from one shell to another. And then all that data is then correlated for us to arrive at a wood risk profile, or complemented with a percentage of strength or a percentage of life left in a pole. So anyway, we've got a couple of customers right now that have kind of shelved their traditional sound and bore and are working with us to have both an aerial and a ground component with the intent of being able to identify potential reject poles earlier in the cycle versus maybe continuing to treat a pole that may need to basically just be replaced, maybe the best thing for that. So I want to talk a little bit about our condition ranking system, and I'll show it to you in just a minute. So what we do is, as we're finding these defects, we are then ranking them based upon a system of what we'll call P10 being the most severe, down line, maybe vegetation on a line, something that's or something that might be imminent structural failure. And we're ranking them from P10 to P40. And the rankings are based upon what we feel like the severity is. And then typically it's tied to the time by which you should get to that or remediate that, days, or maybe it's week, maybe it's months, down to what we'll call information only items. Sometimes we'll be told in an equipment inventory to look out for a certain type of potential insulator, something like that. So that may be a watch list item, that at any given time we could query and find all those if, for instance, we have a problem with a certain type or a certain piece of equipment. So that's our conditioning ranking system. I'll stop there because I'm going to shift gears and go into a live demonstration portion and then get back to the presentation. I haven't been able to monitor any questions. Or are there any questions that I need to answer at this point?
Kevin, is this the job? Pardon me.
I'm sorry?
Is this the job we did in Florida?
I think so.
Yeah, this was about 1,500 poles in this job. And I think it took us about 4 days to get what you're seeing, to do the scanning, about 2 weeks to assimilate the data. So that it gives you an idea of the scope and the speed with which this can be done.
Yeah, and some fresh statistics. We're doing a co-op in Pennsylvania. On our first day, we collected about 185 poles under a full CFA. So anyway, it kind of gives you an idea to Roy's point of how quickly the data can be captured. And then it does take a few weeks for our teams to review it and rank it, and then put it where it's ready to be published back to our customers. So without further ado, I'm going to shift gears and show you a little bit of our priority portal, explain a little bit more about that, and then we'll conclude the presentation. All right, so let me escape here. Let's see here. Well, I said I was going to do that. I don't. All right, that's better. So if we're successful, are you now seeing a screen with some pretty colors on it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this is our asset map view, and deserves a little bit of explanation here. So what we have is we basically have the every defect we found by asset is identified here. So it's color coded. So I like to say that we thematically map the defects by priority. All right. So pretty easy map to be able to navigate around. A little cluttered right now, so I'm going to pare down some of this. So I'm going to look at the priorities as it pertains to 20s, 30s, and 40s. And so what I could do is I could pick on any of these potential assets, and we'll go into a series. We'll go to a series of pictures that were created. So then want to kind of let people be mindful. I talked about that analyzation or the indexing phase. We're indexing against a facility ID. You also see there's some other attributes that could be collected here. Oftentimes we're taking GIS information and we're populating that into some of these fields. In this case, we're still working on this project, so we've got some more data to do. But what the user's presented with is every image in what we'll call a carousel that's been collected on that structure. So what I can do is the way everything is set up with regard to our subject matter experts, they will identify a condition. So if I click here, then I'm only looking at the condition. In this case, just a quick reminder, it says split pole top imminent failure. So when I click on this image, one of the key things I like to point out is this immediate ability to, be able to zoom in and see, a lot of detail. Now, the condition that was found in this particular instance was cracking, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But you could see the detail that you could get when you're take closer inspection of these images. So that's just the, from our team's point, they determined that would, probably at some point be an imminent failure based upon the severity of the cracks. So the other way I could have gotten to that same ID or that same asset, I could go TR69, and then it's just going to have that one. So if you're really knowledgeable about your assets, so you could kick it a facility ID, and we could arrive at the same asset in the same condition. Let's click on it again to just show you we're at the same spot. And there's the cracking. So I've used the word condition. Let me clear this out. Before, I'd like to show you what I mean by that. So here's our condition tables, right? So this is basically where we're putting the metadata or the attributable data against the facility ID for reporting purposes. So I'll recategorize this in a minute, but it kind of shows you how, when we identify something, how it's cataloged in our condition table. And all this is available for export in case you wanted to use your facility ID and then tie that back to another system of record like a GIS or something. Oops. Not leave the meeting. So if I go and I reprioritize some of this by P20s, then I'm able to, quickly scroll through a lot of these assets. So once again, we'll pick on our good old friend here.
Real quick, Kevin, we're seeing a different screen, so you might want to check which screen you're sharing. We're seeing a screen that says meeting topic, webinar weeks, host, AIEC.
Uh-oh. So let me go back up. So if I put screen and share, are you now seeing a report screen?
Yep, that's better.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm having a problem seeing where I'm at. So I appreciate you keeping me.
No problem.
All right. So then, were you able to see the methodology for me to go and type, and tap on one of these polls and everything? You're able to see the images and that, or not? Or do I need to go over that again?
We saw images, Kevin, about the split pole top.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so if I go to conditions table, and let's say I reprioritize this, kind of do some housekeeping here. Are you seeing me scroll through them now? Are you seeing me scroll through a report?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right. So the other thing that we could do is we could look at, once again, based off facility ID, we could look at the equipment. Now, equipment for us on the inventory side, it's not really down to the bolt level. It's more centered around aspects, around, for instance, this one here, let's bring it up. If I click on this, then, kind of same methodology. This is the best picture to see everything we've got, which of course this is really loaded, right? Where you're able to identify, not down to the bolt level, but down to the equipment level. And then once again, kind of going on that whole mantra, we're basically taking the same collection data that we had. We're just creating more downstream benefits from the data based upon further review. So similar to what we did on the condition side of the house. Let's see. Let's go back here. Let's go to the map view. I'm going to show you one more thing, and then we'll kick it back to the presentation because I know we're probably coming up on our time to a certain degree. So on this, it's a pretty glaring issue. Probably we're able to find it pretty quickly. Once again, you're seeing the detail here. A lot of times our guys will say, hey, look, there's a loose bolt. And you're able to see that with the detail. And then one thing is, well, glaringly, just a quick reminder, this was an open wire, and this is just an example of that, and you're able to see it. So I think Roy pointed out, and in meetings I've had with the state in the past, I understand there's a strong, desire and already have drones in place. So, we could look at allowing you folks to use these capabilities, i.e. our speeds and our platform, if that was interest. A lot of times when we talk to people who have their own drone programs, one of the biggest things that they talk about is having problems with is the ability to have the personnel and the time to be able to review and then have it a place to publish or post the data for them to be able to report and actually perform the remediations. So I'm trying to bring up the last slide, and then we'll kick it over. So you're probably asking, well, what's so different about Exelon ClearSight? So we've kind of looked out at some of the predominant providers of these services, particularly on the ground side, with a little aerial. And from what we see, nobody really combines the aerial and the ground. They may be really good at the ground side, but it's kind of dated in the way they collect data. The other feedback we get from customers is, I can't use the data. In other words, it's not presented to me other than maybe a sheet or something like that. Sometimes it's very, very painstaking to get the data that, let's say, here's a bad pole, to get it into my system of record. So, we try to take a more innovative approach with this portal. And so whatever inspections, we do, we could put into the portal so it's made available, be it an IR study, be it LiDAR, be it these pole inspections, be it the comprehensive visual assessments that we pointed out earlier on the overhead side. The other things I think that for distinctions for us is the fact that people only get information on something that's found. They don't get any trending capabilities against data on good poles. So for instance, there with the good poles, you could have this kind of trend that says, based upon what I'm seeing here, then in 5 years, we may see a problem. So you don't want to necessarily only have access to data on the poles that are bad. You'd like to also trend that against the data on poles that are good, where you've got a full complement of both, in service as well as poles that, may need to be replaced as well. We also are big on, doing as much as you can. We're at the asset. So our data can be used again and again after it's collected, offering downstream benefits. And then, being part of a utility, we have the ability to, get a lot of scaling for larger projects. As I pointed out earlier, a lot of customers we're talking to have their own capabilities to do kind of emergent work, but maybe some of the more system-wide, bigger, larger scale projects that are on cycles, typically they're looking to potentially outsource those types of services. And with that, we have a Q&A.
Thank you, Kevin. If there are any questions, please shoot those our way using the chat function, and we'll moderate those. We do have a couple questions that have come in. The first one, can we use collected inspection data to serve other purposes like providing equipment inventory, joint use, or to point out potential issues with vegetation?
Yeah, actually somebody's paying attention. That's good. So yeah, one of the things, what we found when we first started looking at this space probably about 3 years ago, is that a lot of times people were really kind of dialed into collecting the data and then using it for one intended purpose. What we tried to do was we tried to say, hey, how can we holistically collect the data? Back to that slide about, hey, what can we do in one single trip? And then with that, though, the data is available. So at any given time, if somebody says, hey, look, you did a comprehensive facility assessment for us 6 months ago. We're interested in you providing us an equipment inventory. Then if you have the data, then all it is for us is to have our subject matter experts review it and then provide those downstream benefits. Or, we'd like to know if there's any potential vegetation encroachment or potential issues for encroachment along our spans in a right of way, or as it tied to a specific structure or line. So yeah, that's a good question, and we try to pride ourselves on collecting the data in such a way that you can use it over and over again.
Thank you, Kevin. Another question that came in, are we able to report and export data from your solution into our own system of record like a GIS?
Yeah, a lot of people say, hey, look, at the end of the day, I'd like to have one single source of truth. So my comment there is the fact that everything you saw, we could report out the attributes as well as the images. So you could, for instance, we're working with some folks that have an NISC system, and there's a pole inspection kind of application there. We're able to export our data and then index that against that system of record. So when they pull it up with their GIS, they're seeing that structure and they're seeing everything there is to see about that structure. Reports, as well as any conditions or inventory or anything else that's found.
I would also add that we can integrate with other systems too, like SEDC, and to my knowledge, we haven't come across a system we couldn't accommodate an integration.
Yeah, and I mentioned NIC, and I probably should have touched on it, be a little clearer there. If a GIS system, or maybe you're trying to get it to push it to work order management system. So we're mindful of the fact that the data, is not, it's dynamic. It keeps living on, and it's used throughout other systems in order for, once a defect is identified, the work needs to be, actually pushed out and done.
Thank you for those responses. A couple more questions have come in. Can you tell us more about your capabilities with LiDAR and any other specialties? Yeah,
interesting enough, and I'm going to pick on some stuff that we're doing in California. So in California, obviously everybody's seeing, these wildfires. So a lot of the owner operators, we've been working with IOUs, we've worked with independent folks that are kind of more of just own assets that are kind of traded back and forth. They're really, really keen on trying to find out where they may have something that may cause a service interruption, like a limb falling, or they're also looking at fuel. They're looking at, brush underneath the pole. They're looking at potential, fuel in and around canopies. If there was to be, the case is, typically the way this works is you'll have a hole, what they'll call a check in a pole. And what typically happens is a flame from an ember, if you will lodge itself there and create a fire. So they're really interested in trying to see how, if a fire does occur at an asset, what can they do around that to start taking away the fuel to contain that fire. And in those modeling, we're doing minimum vegetation clearance distances, where we're measuring the radial distance between vegetation and services. We're doing things like, there's a lot of kind of microclimating with wind and stuff. So we're doing a lot of analysis to determine when a line may break loose, based upon certain circumstances. as well as when a line under maximum load, how low it may sag in relation to it being potentially conflicted with vegetation that might cause either encroachment or a potential service outage. And the specialties off of that, we're doing a lot of risk mitigation where you're taking that information and you're building out, you're identifying points of interest, and then you're building out mitigated plans. So it could be a vegetation management plan. So in addition to being able to identify where you have problems, we're also working to provide estimates, what type of remediation is needed, what type of equipment, the estimation on time, blocks, and, all that kind of stuff we're doing as a function of the collection of our LiDAR data for these other work products.
Another question came in. It's kind of a 2 or 3-parter here. What value add can ClearSight bring to co-ops that already have drones? And will you analyze data we've collected as a service? As in, could we send you our collected data to utilize your expertise to inspect, rank, and manage our data in your platform?
Yeah, and back to this whole notion, and I'm probably going to use the right word, but the hybrid function. So we're experimenting right now with one of our own operating utilities where they're self-performers. In other words, they're doing all their collections, right? But we're providing the subject matter expertise to review the data, to rank the data, and then we're also providing the platform to be able to publish and then interact with the data. So the answer to your question would be yes. The only thing that I would add to it, we'd have to kind of see samples of the data you're collecting. We may ask for, kind of moving forward, maybe there's some adjustments on how you collect data, just where we'll make sure we get the completeness of it. So when our subject matter experts review the data, then they have everything they need in order to perform their ranking and prioritization. And kind of a general question back to the group is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things we find is people who stand up their own programs, typically it's, because of a storm or what have you to kind of start it. But where they find, it becomes more of maybe more than they had bargained for is in that compilation of the data, that looking at the data and assessing it and then managing that data. So a lot of times when customers have, a drone program, they're still trying to tackle those other things. And to the question, we're certainly, very, very interested in having folks self-perform, but use our tools and our subject matter experts to help them in those final tasks to kind of complete the life cycle of the collection, the indexing, the analysis, and then the final distribution once defects and reporting are found.
Another question that came in, would you please explain the differences between what we know as traditional ground line inspection and what you provide with your pull drill collections?
The biggest thing, typically we're seeing, kind of core samples or sound and bore. It kind of goes back to really our DNA. We're all about data and analytics and innovation and stuff. So the reason that we decided to explore other options than just traditional sound and bore is we felt like that there's data that can be gathered that could then be determined to put together analytical or run analytics to put profiles together. So we searched the market. We found this organization called IML Pole Drill. They've been around in Europe forever, and probably the last 2 or 3 years they've been pretty strong in the United States. And it fit within what we're trying to do. We're trying to gather data and then trend against it, so analytics. And part of what they're able to do, or with this technology, without excavation, is they're able to get more not only quantitative data, but qualitative data. They're understanding, how shelf thicknesses. They're understanding, kind of environments, how the environment is affecting where a pole is situated. So you're able to take all these different factors, and then you're able to put a ranking and a risk profile together. And so we just felt like that was probably more along the lines of our innovative approach than just, someone doing a traditional, sound and bore or some other core samples. The other thing on the core samples, where this drill is doing more of a needle, kind of a penetration within it, then it's not as, it's not as evasive as some of the deeper core samples. Sometimes what we hear is over time, after a pole has been sampled and sampled and sampled, then that in itself is creating some, some structural integrity problems.
One last question for you guys. Do you offer a la carte pricing?
We do, just come to us. We can figure out how, what components maybe you would be interested in, based upon where you are as far as your own capabilities to perform. So yeah, we could easily put something together like that. There are also, benefits to bundling as well, in that if we know ahead of time that you're going to want not only condition assessments, but you're going to joint use inventory, you're going to want equipment inventory, and then maybe you're wanting in vegetation, then our subject matter experts can do that in one, kind of one sitting versus incrementally. So there'll be a savings if you bundle, but yeah, we would offer it a la carte as well.
Thank you, Kevin. I was getting ready to ask you what your contact information is, but you put it up on the screen for me. So if there are any of our attendees have any questions, here's the information for you, or you can always reach out to Ashley or myself. We can put you in contact with Kevin and Roy. I do want to thank both Kevin and Roy for presenting today. It was very beneficial. We did record this webinar, so that should be updated probably later this week, maybe next week, if you're interested in going back and watching the webinar again. So with that, our next webinar is at 10:30. It is the basics of seismic design. So if you've not already registered, registration has closed. So if you need that if you're interested in that and need that login information, feel free to contact Ashley. She'll get you all set up. So with that, I want to thank you guys, and we appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for letting us be a part of your day.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.